Hi everyone, I'm still waiting for a few other people that are coming in a bit slowly. We had 17 people here, so at the moment it's a pretty good number to start off with. We have about up to 40 people registered tonight, so I'm not sure we'll get that number, but it's good, looking good so far. So I would give it a couple more minutes and then we can start getting on the presentation. Oh, we're going to get started now. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mathew. I'm from Brisbane, and I'm a social entrepreneur with a disability, and I run an inclusive insight that will help you to run this session, a monthly session on the disability leadership and self-employment. So it's very important we see that an amazing development post-coronavirus as well. We see so many developments in the disability space with startup culture, inhibition, and all that kind of stuff with the economic development. So I will going to introduce you, Pete, in a second. So what we're going to session about tonight, everyone, I can see you're doing very well, pretty on the mood. So everyone will have an opportunity to speak. Most of the presentation will be about 30 minutes or so, because we've got a whole hour of doing it. And then we got message in the chat window anytime you like to do. We'll follow up for during the period of time. And I send a link of the live captions in the chat as well. And also that the session will be recorded, and because we have a lot of requests of people who want to be session recorded, especially the last few months. So I think it would be a good bonus to look at back and the people who have missed out on tonight's session. So, thank you, Pete. Thank you for being the guest speaker tonight. It's just so exciting. As we can see what's happened a couple of weeks ago, that what you had a demonstration event with a remarkable tank. It was amazing. We watched it, the different disability ideas, and that it's so inclusive, and it's so much opportunity for something to drive social change as well. So I would like to go with the presentation from Pete, who had a PowerPoint slide. Here we go.
Thank you, Matt. And just as I'm sharing my screen as well, I just wanted to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land. I'm on Camaragal land, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I actually think that our Aboriginal brothers and sisters are some of the original innovators and entrepreneurs, and they cared for our land for generations. And so we have much to learn from our Aboriginal brothers and sisters. So pay my respect to anyone here today who is an Aboriginal person. And yeah, thank you, Mathew, for giving this opportunity as well to share a little bit about the work of Remarkable. And I'll share a little bit about that in a little bit. I know some of you on the call tonight, so it's great to see some familiar faces, but great to see some new faces as well. And look forward to connecting with you, hopefully, at some point as well. I have to also just give acknowledgement to some of our partners. So iCare Foundation are a principal partner. So Remarkable is a division within Cerebral Palsy Alliance. So for those outside of New South Wales, Cerebral Palsy Alliance is a New South Wales and ACT service provider. We've been around for about 75 years and provide all sorts of disability service supports, as well as research, and technology and innovation is one arm of that. Also thanks to Telstra as well. They were kind of one of the original ones that believed in us right back at the beginnings of Remarkable, and also to Microsoft as well, who've been a partner for the last couple of years. So I thought tonight it would be useful to, Mathew's asked for me to share just a little bit of the story of Remarkable and a couple of the startups. I actually find that conversation is really, really useful. So I'm looking forward to the Q&A time after this session. But I thought as well, I know that there's a bunch of you already who are entrepreneurs yourself. And so I'd love to be able to kind of just share a couple of tips that we do see as things that are really important things for entrepreneurs to take into account. And I guess just starting with the story of Remarkable, we've got this kind of real interesting paradox, haven't we, of assistive technology. And on one hand, assistive technology is incredibly useful and helpful, and has been has provided so many people autonomy and independence. You think of kind of, you know, the role that Cochlear has been able to have for those with hearing impairments, or powered mobility in terms of giving them the ability to choose where they go rather than being pushed in places. But we also find that a lot of assistive technology is monofunctional. It is quite expensive. There's often kind of some technologies are a little bit clunky as well. And so, so this is the kind of paradox that we kind of sit within. At the same time, we're all on the edge of this kind of new era in technology. We see kind of incredible technologies like artificial intelligence and robotics, VR and AR, smart homes robotics, wearables, 3D printed technology, drones, self-driving cars, and we can see the immediate kind of application of some of those things in this space of disability. And so we have this kind of really interesting paradox of there's technology that's here and it is arriving around us, but at the same time we've got some of the assistive technologies are still quite old and clunky and very, very expensive as well, just in terms of the way that the market is set up. And then if we're to kind of think about the other influences that are kind of happening around us at the moment, you know, if you were to take something like the Snowy Hydro Scheme 2.0, that is an incredible, you know, it's heralded as an amazing kind of country building piece of infrastructure. It's going to cost around about $5.1 billion. It used to say 4.2, but now it's kind of blown out a little bit to around about 5.1 billion. In terms of infrastructure spending over the next 10 years, federal government have talked about around about $100 billion is going to go into infrastructure. There was an incredible announcement around building naval ships, and a couple of years ago, that's about over $180 billion as well that's going into that. But none of that is kind of anywhere near the investment that's actually going into the National Disability Insurance Scheme in the next 10 years. $252 billion approximately is going into that. It's one of the biggest nation building exercises that we've ever done. And I think it really, yes, we know that there's a whole bunch of, there's a bunch of issues with it. But comparatively, it is a really, really exciting period of time. And I think that we've still got opportunities as a sector and as a movement of people to be able to continue to shape that as a scheme as well. So again, this kind of sits in the background because it is interesting having conversations with people from other parts of the world about how they view kind of the work of NDIS in Australia. Again, there's work to do, but it is an exciting platform. the same time, we've got this kind of this scale up in impact investment. So as kind of wealth is transferred from from one generation to another, younger generations are caring more about their money, not just having financial return, but to also think about the kind of world that that's actually creating as well. So thinking about issues like climate change and diversity and inclusion, these things are really important to the generations that are coming through as well. And so there's this interesting power dynamic that's happening as the wealth is transferred to these other generations. And so we kind of see these three as kind of being kind of the background influences that started to get us to think a little bit differently. So you've got this interesting kind of intersection of technology, investment, and the market that NDIS is really starting to form. And that was kind of, I guess, a little bit of the background, but to tell kind of the actual story, and some of you I know that are on this call have heard this story before, so apologies about that. But I think it's useful just to kind of understand a bit of the kind of origin story of Remarkable as well. So Cerebral Palsy Alliance was looking to run something called World Cerebral Palsy Day. So there was a Cerebral Palsy Awareness Week. A few different organizations had started from around the world, had started talking together about doing a World Cerebral Palsy Day. And this was kind of back in about 2011. Some colleagues of mine said, you know, a day for a day's sake is great, but, you know, we need to be kind of thinking about advocacy more broadly. We need to be thinking about how we kind of expand this message around people with cerebral palsy have things to offer. And a lot of that is a really tough battle that you have to fight in various parts of the world. In Vietnam, I think the word for cerebral palsy was bad brain or no hope. And so, you know, you're fighting against some of these kind of really kind of primitive understandings of disability. And so we said, why don't we create a day that actually is about celebration and innovation as well? And so that was kind of the birth of World Cerebral Palsy Day. We ended up kind of putting a campaign together that was around, it was called Change My World in 1 Minute. It was asking people with cerebral palsy all over the world, what's one thing that would change your world? And this gentleman that's on your screen, his name is Alpa, and he lives in a small country town called Bursa. It's in Turkey. And he said, the thing that would change my world is a solar powered wheelchair. He had a powered chair, but it was quite old. And he wasn't able to afford to replace that powered chair. And so it didn't hold enough charge to get into town. So town was actually a little way away, kind of over the crest of the hill that you kind of see behind that lake. And then he also said, there's a temple that I'd like to worship at. And that also is a little way away. And so these things limit my life. So he said, but we have oodles of sun in Turkey. And he said, if someone could create a solar powered wheelchair, that would change his world. It ended up getting a whole bunch of votes from the CP community from around the world. And so we went, well, how hard can developing a solar powered wheelchair be? And we put it out to the worldwide maker community to say, can someone help us develop a prototype around this? The University of Virginia in the USA actually put up their hand and said, yes, we can do that. So we provided them with a little bit of money, and they created a prototype of that. It's still probably, I think, I'd have to say it's one of the ugliest prototypes I think I've ever seen. This was the prototype. So you can see it's, yes, it's a powered chair and it has some solar panels on top, but they do fold down if you kind of, you know, need to put them away, or they provide some sunshade, I guess. But when we said, can we ship that prototype over to Alpa, they said, absolutely. And so we shipped the prototype over to Alpa, kind of arrived in a container. And within days of him receiving that, we got this photo from Alpa. And that white dome that you can kind of see in the background there is the temple that he wanted to worship at. About 6 weeks later, we found out that he had a part-time job as well. He excitedly announced to us. So these were things that we said, this is technology changing the lives of people with disability. And we're excited by that notion. Since then, we then hosted some hackathons, and I know some of you have been involved in those hackathons. And the part that we kind of found that pulled up short was they were all about ideas. So it was about people with disability co-designing new products and services. And we found that pulled up a little bit short because it was just then about the ideas. And so we decided that we had to kind of push it beyond an idea. And we'd heard about these things called accelerators. And some of you know what accelerators are. But accelerators essentially support those early stage companies with some support, mentorship, education, a little bit of finance oftentimes. And so we've launched a 16-week program. It provides $35,000 in funding for startups. When we can, when we're not in COVID, we provide some co-working space in Sydney, and also mentoring and coaching from people who have grown startups before. And really what an accelerator does is, in a very short period of time, it attempts to get startups to push through to kind of different kind of gates and areas of development that we believe are critical for startups to do. When you're at home kind of working on things and you don't have that kind of level of accountability, sometimes it's harder to get to that next stage. And so we try and create an environment where our startups are able to grow quickly. Now, some of them do still fail. There is an element of entrepreneurship that's always a risk. But we believe if you can try and perform your experiments in shorter periods of time, then you can move on. If it doesn't work, then you can move on to the next thing, and you're saving both time and money in doing that. I'm sorry. And this is a little bit of kind of what we do in the accelerator. So I can see Eugene on the call, and he was part of our pre-accelerator bootcamp. So it gets, there's a very kind of rigorous selection process to get through to the bootcamp. And that happens kind of prior to the accelerator starting. We take double the amount of startups through to that. And then we select a smaller number of those going through to the accelerator itself. And then those 16 weeks that you can see, the last 4 bubbles, they're around product development. So making sure your product actually fits the needs of those that you're trying to serve. Making sure that you have a good business model that is attached to that. Your go-to-market strategies around sales and selling. So you can have a great product, have a great way of delivering that to the community, but you then also need to be able to sell that to them. You need to be able to convince someone to give out some dollars and to buy your product. Then the last part is about governance and sustainability. So how do you make sure that you're set up for the long haul? How do you ensure that you're set up to be a sustainable business, that you know how much runway you have left of the money that you do have before you have to either raise capital or that you can break even through customer sales? So that's a little bit of what we go through in the accelerator. It's a pretty intense experience, no doubt about that. But so far we've seen around about, if I can get my, we've seen 32 startups come through the accelerator so far. That's created around about 480 full-time equivalent jobs. So we're adding to, these are often employers of people with disability, not always, but sometimes. We also have served around about 24,000 customers with a disability through the startups. And for the investment that Cerebral Palsy Alliance and our partners have been able to put in, that includes our operational capital and the investments that we make. That's been around about $4 million over the last 5 years. But our startups in turn have been able to attract around about $24 million. So that's in grant money, in debt that they can borrow, and also in equity as well, like equity investments. And I really encourage you to have a look at, Mathew talked about our demo day that was on recently. If you go onto our remarkable YouTube channel, you can have a look at that most recent demo day and see 7 of the latest startups that were on there. But I thought I'd just give you a couple of examples before I give you kind of 3 tips, and then we'll kind of move into some Q&A time as well. And to tell the story of one of those, one was kind of in the first cohort and one is in the last cohort that I'll kind of give you an example of. This is Eve, and Eve actually is a client at CPA and at Cerebral Palsy Alliance, and she came along to receive therapy services. And as part of that, she needed to get some orthotics fitted. So I don't know if you know what orthotics are, but they're essentially a small little plastic, well, sometimes they're plastic, shield that goes over the foot. And particularly for Eve's case, she was standing up on one toe, on the ball of one foot, and on the other one, it was kind of turned, her foot was turned inwards. So that was the way her cerebral palsy, the muscles were tightening and affecting her lower limbs. So she needed a couple of orthotics. The current process around that is quite a painful process. So it is a process where they actually take the foot and they, for someone with CP, and she has spastic cerebral palsy, her muscles are tight, so rock hard tight in her legs. And so they literally take the orthotist takes the foot and bends or twists and stretches that foot into the position that they want it. It's a really, really painful process. They then take a plaster cast of that and then allow for that to set and then cut that off. Now for Eve, when she had this happen, her dad was telling me this was the second worst day of her life so far. He described the first worst day of her life as the day that she actually needed to be revived 3 times when she was born, the day she was born. She was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck, and she came out of her mum blue and wasn't breathing. And so she had to be revived 3 times by the doctors that were in the room that day. That was the first worst day of her life. But the second worst day was the day that she got her orthotics fitted. When this orthotist was having to twist her foot into the position that they needed it, she was screaming in absolute pain. It was causing her lots of pain. She was also really, really scared by this process. She actually needed 4 grown adults to hold her down, to hold her still, so that they could fit this orthotic to her. Now, when the founders of the startup I'm going to tell you about heard about this is Johan and Mel, and they're from a startup called Ability Made. When they heard about this, they thought, well, hang on, I'm an engineer. Johan's an engineer. Mel's doing things around 3D manufacturing and 3D fabrication. She thought, well, actually, we can do something about this. And so they started thinking about how they could take a physical process and turn this into a digital process. And so this is kind of one of their earliest prototypes that they had of the scanner. And as you can see, it has a number of different cameras in there, and it takes a digital image of the foot rather than a physical image of the foot. They then can digitally manipulate that rather than physically manipulating that. Now, I don't know if you're hearing the music because it's really loud in my ear. Are you hearing that music at all? No? Okay, that's okay. I'll keep that going. Then rather than a hot glue gun type process, this is a kind of slightly more advanced form of 3D manufacturing. And this is the orthotic coming out. This is fitting the orthotic. And then trialing the orthotic as well. So rather than having this kind of very painful and quite a slow process as well, the orthotists take quite a bit of time to do this. They're looking at shortening the process from around about 6 weeks down to, they want to actually get it within 24 hours that they can actually produce these orthotics. The great thing about Eve as well was that they were able to print that out. They put her name on the back of it. They asked her what color she wanted. She said pink. That's my favorite color. This is an image of their new scanner that they're about to launch as well. So it's looking quite high tech now. And that's Eve with her orthotics. It really transformed the way she kind of was thinking about her orthotics as well. She would go from barely kind of wearing them to walk inside our therapy center at Allambie to she did kind of most of a lap of Narrabeen Lake, which is about an 8-kilometer lap, which is quite incredible. So really, really amazing technology. Second startup I'll tell you about just briefly is Gecko Tracks, and these are the 2 founders Hoy and Ryan. They're in Melbourne. And the kind of rim of the tyre that you see Ryan, who has the blonde hair, holding, fits onto the wheel of a manual wheelchair, and it enables that to spread out like a gecko's foot, and it gives it slightly more, I guess, area that it's in contact with. And so it allows someone who's a manual wheelchair user to actually get across surfaces like the sand and to get off road. Ryan's background is that he loves the outdoors. He loves kind of going to experience the great outdoors. And Hoy is one of his friends. And so, I'm sorry, I've got a little puppy dog that's running around underneath my feet at the moment. And so Ryan really wanted Hoy to be able to experience the same things that he experiences by experiencing the great outdoors. And so he designed this with Hoy, and it ended up winning a Dyson, who do the vacuum cleaners, a Dyson Design Award, one in Australia, and then it actually took out second place in the world as well. So this is just literally launched to market about 2 weeks ago, and is now readily available from a number of different suppliers. So I thought it's interesting just giving a couple of different examples. Both of those obviously have a hardware element to it, but not all of the startups that we have hardware. They can be software as well. So then just in the couple of minutes that we've got left, 5 or so minutes, I thought I'd just give you 3 quick tips. I know a number of you are already entrepreneurs, or you're considering entrepreneurship. And so these are some of the things that we've seen kind of happen time and time again with startups that I thought could be quite useful. Hopefully you find it useful anyway. The first one kind of sounds a little bit like I'm teaching you to suck eggs, but the first one is really around finding a problem to solve and then validating your assumptions around that particular problem. So as we know, all great products are actually solving a problem for us. Whether it be our phones in trying to communicate, or entertainment these days, whether it be a car to kind of get from one place to another. All of the solutions that have been developed are developed by people no smarter than you or I. They've been developed in the past by looking at solving a particular problem for someone. So it's about understanding what is the nature of that problem. Now, oftentimes we find that we'll try and solve a problem that we experience ourselves. And that's a really, really great thing because you have a good understanding of it. But you are I guess a research project of one. You need to then expand your network to be able to find others who are experiencing this problem as well. And you need to be able to figure out what are the biggest assumptions that you're making around your business. So that assumption might be people are going to be super excited about this, and they're going to want to pay $20 a month to get a subscription to this. That might be one assumption that you're making. Another assumption might be that that disability service providers are going to love your product and are going to want to partner with you. You need to figure out there's a whole range of assumptions that every single founder is making at the beginning of their product. And you need to figure out what are the biggest ones that I'm making around that. And you need to then talk to people to understand, how can I understand if that's really a problem and that my solution is going to solve that. Now, the second part of that is around validating those assumptions. And it's important when we do that, and this is the second tip, when you're interviewing people, is not to ask about their possible future behavior. So you're not to kind of go to someone and go, hey, I've built this product. Do you think this is really good? The nature of humans is that we always want to please other people. Well, generally speaking anyway, we like to please other people. And so when you go out and ask, is this a product that you like? They'll inevitably probably say yes, because that's what they think you want to hear. So the best way of interviewing someone is actually to ask about their current actual behavior. So rather than asking, do you like this product? You say, when you're communicating with your family up in Queensland, or your friends up in Queensland, how do you communicate? How do you solve that problem right now? And that will give you a lot better information than asking them, do you like my product or do you like me? So ask how they currently solve that problem right now. Actual behavior versus future possible behavior. There's a really, really great book. I keep recommending it to people. It's a bit American, and you'll probably get it with the reading of about 2 chapters of it, but it's a longer book than that. It's called the MUM test, and it's an American book, so it's spelled M-O-M, but really, really great kind of advice in there on how to validate your current assumptions and how to interview people well. And then the final tip before we go to questions is to realize that startup is actually more than about the product itself, and it's actually a lot about marketing and sales. So, so developing a product is one thing, and we kind of feel like, oh my goodness, finally I've got this product out. But that is only the start of the journey. The biggest thing that you actually need to learn, and the biggest skills that you need to learn, is around sales and marketing. How do you convince people to buy your product, to try your product, to move from free to paying customer? That is the biggest and the hardest part. Working out how you can do that at scale. How can you use digital channels to do that? How can you tell a story about that? And the best thing that we find to do is to try and find your first, we say, find your first 10 super users. So who are those first 10 people that are willing to go with you on this journey, who are experiencing this problem in the biggest possible way? So they are someone who goes, look, I will pay you anything if you can solve that problem for me. You need to try and find those people, not just people that just go, yeah, I kind of experienced a little bit of that. And yeah, I don't mind trying out your product. That's kind of not a super user. You need to find people that are like, oh my goodness, like I'm tearing my hair out. And if I can find a solution to that, I will pay anything to get a solution. They're your super users. So try and find about 10 of those, and then incentivize them to try your product. This is kind of beyond the kind of validating your assumptions part. This is when you know that, yeah, I think we're onto something here. You then find those 10 super users and you say, look, can you just give my product a try? And then I want you to give me some feedback about all the things that you love and all the things that you wish that the product would do. And then you ask them, how do I find other people who are like you? How do I find other people who experience the same problem as you? That is a good way from growing from 10 super users to 50 super users. And then you keep repeating that process. How do you then go from 50 super users to 150 super users? And that is the way that you grow your business. It's obviously, I'm simplifying it in a big way because we've only got kind of a few minutes together, but I wanted to leave you with those 3 tips. So back to the first one is find a problem to solve for and validate your assumptions around that. The second one is when interviewing, ask about current actual behavior, not future possible behavior. And then the last one is realize that startups are more about marketing and sales than it is about perfecting a product. I've seen too many people that kind of go, I'm still working on it before I launch this particular product. I had one person actually said to me that they had spent $800,000 of their own money before launching the product. They launched it and then figured out that people actually didn't need that product. We don't want you to go to that extreme, obviously. We want you to understand that your product is a good fit for the market and then to get it out there. Last thing I'll do before kind of opening it up for some Q&A is just to give you 2 opportunities as well of things that you could get involved in. One is called Designathon. We've run this since the beginning. And the Designathon this year is going to be a fully online experience and happen over the month of October. During October, we're going to provide a whole bunch of supports for people to solve one of 3 problems. And you can jump on our website, which is remarkable.org.au, and you can have a look at the 3 challenges that are up there. We're putting up some prize money, about $10,000 for each of the prizes, for each of the 3 problem areas that we want to see a solution for. So if you or someone that you know are interested in being part of that, yeah, we'll get them to, we've just opened applications for that. The second one is our monthly insights, different to Mathew's insights sessions. So we run Remarkable Insights once a month, and the next one's going to be about esports and accessible esports. That'll happen in September. So again, you can see the details for that on our Remarkable website, remarkable.org.au. I think I was going to show you this, but you can't hear the sound, so I think I'll skip that and go to Q&A and hand it back over to Mathew.
Oh, thank you, Pete. It was really an inspiring presentation. I'm pretty sure everyone felt exhausted on an overwhelming but inspiring presentation. It's really, really good to see what's just happening around Australia about that's a program we're actually looking for. So you can see what's happening where the rise of self-employment and the NDIS and everything, invitation space, technology, all the development, it's all coming in one place. And that's for people like us. So before, I will have some questions for you, but I've got to leave the other people have questions first. So all the people, we got about 19 people. I said a couple of people left earlier. I don't know what's happening. Then you might just say, unmute yourself and hand up and then have a question to Pete. Still waiting. You could just go for it.
Be brave. Sometimes hard to be brave.
Starting to hear crickets now.
We're usually full of questions, but you may have answered them all.
Oh, T, I don't know about that.
I love the idea. Thank you very much. I'm actually currently a student at QUT and belong to the Entrepreneurship mob. So
I went to QUT as well.
Oh, cool! Awesome.
Yeah.
You know,
used to be in Brisbane.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what's the kind of nature of some of the things that you'd like to work on then?
Well, I'd like to personally start a social enterprise, but also in saying that, my son, who's 18, he is a musician. He's an extraordinary musician. And he also lives with a significant disability as well.
Yeah.
But he would also like to start his own entrepreneurial business as well. So anything that's around, you know, anything innovative. I just love to listen to other people's ideas and, you know, I guess sometimes some of your idea, like personally my ideas, I think, oh, is that a bit too crazy? Am I thinking too far outside of a box? But it always comes back to going to the people who you think you're solving the problem for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's something that I had actually forgotten about, because I sort of thought, oh, I know they're going to love this. You know what I mean? And I think we might fall, well, I know I was falling into that trap.
Yes.
And, oh, you know, you're going to love it, you know, regardless.
I love it, so everyone else must love it.
Yeah.
Right?
That'd be awesome.
And they might as well. Like, that's the thing. Like, you might have actually discovered something that actually is a really big problem for other people as well. But that's one of those assumptions that we need to validate and go, yeah, is that really true?
Getting around to well, okay, for a question, how do you approach? Where do you go? How would you have a list of questions? Would you learn some sort of rote, and you know, so that when you go and meet people, you go, hey, what do you do when, you know, should you have something like a quick 3-minute shebang so that you can ask people questions everywhere?
Definitely. I think a really, really great question, T. I think that being well prepared for those interviews is really, really important. So again, don't go out and go, hey, I've got this really cool idea. This is what it is. Do you think you'd like that? Because people will inevitably say, yeah, that sounds great. You go right ahead, do that.
Yeah.
Whether they really believe that or not. So you've got to go like, so that particular problem that you that seem to have, what do you do about that? Like, who do you turn to try and help you solve that? Or where do you go to try and do that? And if they say, well, you know, nowhere, there's no one that's solving that. like, but how do you get through? Like, because you're obviously still kind of continuing on. So what are the ways? So really delve into, again, think about past behavior, because past behavior will always be a good indicator of future behavior. So always try and ask them about things that they've done in the past. Did you go looking for information somewhere? Did you try out any other companies? What companies were they? What did you like about those? What didn't you like about those? All of those sorts of questions, I think, are really, really important for you to find out about. I noticed we've had a question in there from Belinda about what's the difference between creating a product to a service. And that's a really, really great question as well too. I think so many of those fundamental principles still remain. You still need to kind of understand what is that problem that sits at the heart of that service solving that problem. There's a little different in terms of execution around that. So whereas with technology, I guess you can scale that up quite quickly. You need to think kind of more critically around the business model of a service-based business than you perhaps do for a widget type business. But I think all of the kind of same rules apply for thinking about just getting started. So how do I find someone else that has that same problem that are going to another service to solve that? It's still, a service will still need to solve that problem. Yeah. I can see another.
I'm going to go to one of the questions on the chat, but I see Robin unmute herself there. I will get back to Robin in a minute. I got one question from Belinda. If she don't mind, ask me and read it down, or you want to speak for yourself, Belinda? I don't know. Okay.
I think Peter, you answer my question then.
Yeah. So I'd think about that. Sorry, you go again, Belinda.
Thank you for your answer, Peter.
No worries. I should learn to shut up as well. That when I've answered something, I shouldn't have to explain it anymore. So thank you. That's a really good question, though. Really good question.
Okay,
there is one in there as well, Matthew, from David. I can see that. Are we seeing any increasing in funding for projects, turning from inception to reality? And I think this is an encouragement to you, T. There's never too much out of the box thinking. So in terms of, is there an increase in funding? I'll be really, really honest. In Australia, it is still really, really tough to kind of find funding. In this kind of startup space, there's different kind of jargon that's thrown around. They talk about angel investment. They talk about Series A investment and Series B investment. The really, really quick version of that is generally you'll start with a startup by doing a what's called a triple F round of funding. So that is friends, family, and fools. So kind of people who are around you that say, look, I'm willing to get behind you to get your social enterprise off the ground. Or it might be you putting your own money into that. It's really, really difficult to actually get someone that just says, I've got this great idea. You kind of sometimes see it in America where they go, I've got this great idea, and they go, I'll give you $1 million to go and build that. We don't have that kind of culture in Australia, sadly, for people just to back ideas. Oftentimes they want to see you having built something. So the first round is that triple F, friends, family, fools. So think about how you can get people around you to kind of support. Sometimes that also involves crowdfunding. I don't know if you've heard of crowdfunding before. The second round is what's called angel investment. And so there are angel investors in Australia and around the world. And essentially they usually look for early stage businesses. You will have usually tried to build, you will have built something. So you will have something that people can see or taste or touch. So if it's a service, it's kind of, you've got some customers already. If it's a product, you've got kind of an early stage prototype of that. And angel investment might be kind of anywhere from, you know, $5,000 to a couple of $100,000. And they know that it's a highly risky kind of enterprise that they're kind of getting behind. But they do a number of those investments with the hope that when they go in early, they get a big payoff if it really develops. So you jump in and kind of make a $20,000 investment into something like a Facebook kind of back in the day, and now it's worth millions and millions of dollars. So then the next round, so that you might kind of get up to around about $500,000 or $500,000 if you get a number of angel investors investing in you. But generally it's up to around about a couple of $100,000. Seed round is kind of up to around about, kind of in Australia, it's around about $1 million. Some kind of can be a little bit more than that, but a seed round is, you'll see people like venture capital, some impact investors will invest in that space as well. And they might be writing checks anywhere between kind of 50 and a couple of $100,000. And then by the time they'll want to see a really well-developed business model, probably somewhere around about $1 million in annual revenue, and kind of de-risk the business and so that you don't have too many assumptions there. So,
Yeah,
and then you kind of go up from there.
Yeah, that we got there. An article written from Jordan O'Reilly of High Up last week saying about the importance of investment in disability space, including the NDIS, including the measures post-coronavirus economic recovery. Because you can see how much investment come in the first place, which is a $30 million NDIS team there, and then you got to add social enterprise on the top of that, and then all the social impact. So it's just so much to unlock in this space, and that's what the position right now. A lot of people tonight talk about there's a big opportunity for us to lead in this space. We talk about solution, jobs, and even direct employment for people with disability, and so on. It's really an amazing space to that.
Absolutely.
I could think I've got Robin. Do you have a question there?
Unmute. Hello, everybody. I haven't met you before, Pete, but I'm CEO of Bionics Queensland, and I guess
great to meet you.
In the COVID world, it's not like I can fly down to meet you, so I thought this was my opportunity to, well, just say that I really admire what you're doing, and it'll be good, the issues you've raised about getting more funding and kind of, at a national level, sort of encouraging, I guess, more giving towards these types of projects.
Yes.
From our perspective, of course, with Bionics Queensland, we're kind of, we've just run our first Bionics Queensland challenge, but there's so much synergy between what you're trying to achieve, and what we're trying to achieve. And I can just see that some of the core challenges around accessibility, affordability, we've got some great advocacy as well as, shared advocacy interests and other things that I think will help all of the people with the projects that you're talking to, and obviously the people we're dealing with in Queensland as well. So just want to say hello and just reach out, really.
And I think you raise a really good point. I think that, Australia as a differentiator in the rest of the world, I think other parts of the world, I speak to entrepreneurs in different parts of the world, and I was speaking to someone in Canada a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying that actually Australia is a market that they're really quite interested in because of the well-developed policy that we've got here around NDIS. Again, we know that there's more work to be done on NDIS, but the rest of the world are actually looking at Australia right now around this. And so you as entrepreneurs, you as founders of new businesses, I think it's a really, really rich opportunity, as you say, Robin. It's a great opportunity right now for Australia to be kind of leading the world in some of those things.
I think off the back of COVID as well, we've seen, let's call it more of a focus on science, thank God, than perhaps, but beyond that, And that's what I love about what you're doing, Pete. This isn't all about science. It's about everyday people wanting to make a difference, you know, and
Absolutely.
I think that's what we're really seeing with the wonderful projects you brought through, Remarkable, is that really anyone can have a crack at solving a problem. And, you know, it's so many people too. I was listening to T, you know, it's so many people available to help you structure research, to talk to people, and people, you know, there's so many support, and Pete, obviously you'd go through this, but so many mentors that will give of their time to help with that process. So
absolutely,
it's really
absolutely.
good.
And yeah, I guess you're right. Like, it's, for us, technology is not an end in itself. Technology has to kind of exist for a purpose, and we're hoping that you know, through technology is just one way of breaking down some of these barriers around inclusion, around full autonomy. You know, I used to get really frustrated. I had a staff member who was in my team, and she would say that she wasn't able to come into work that day because the carer hadn't turned up for her. And she was just expected to stay in her bed until sometimes 11 o'clock in the morning. And I just used to get so angry on her behalf, because I was like, that's just, it's taken away her autonomy and ability to, she wanted to be a kind of someone who was producing good work and coming to work to do that. And yet she was being let down kind of time and time again because we weren't able to have someone to help her get up in the morning. And I actually said at the time, a robot could do this. Like, let's get some you know, some robots to kind of help someone independently get out of bed, to make sure that, you know, if the carer doesn't turn up, that that they can still choose to do that. Now, I also have conversations with friends of mine who are vision impaired, who have said, you know, they've had multiple people come up to them and say, we can do a robot that actually does everything that your guide dog does. And she always says to me, just because you can design it doesn't mean you should, because for her dog gives her so much more than just guidance and assistance. For her, it's a companion. And so, again, when we think about those super users, we need to think about what are all the things that are involved in a particular product or service.
Cool. I think we're going to run out of time, so I'm going to have one more question before we move it on. Anyone have a final question?
There's a comment in there from Nikki. She's noticed that a lot of funding and grants have disappeared or just stopped due to COVID. Hopefully they'll reappear soon. Yeah, I don't know if other people are kind of seeing some similar things, but we've certainly noticed that it will, if it hasn't started to impact now, it probably will over the next kind of 12 to 18 months, some of those funding opportunities. But at the same time, having said that, I think that we've been talking to a lot of venture capital and impact investors as well, and they kind of see things in kind of 10 and 15-year blocks. So they're saying, look, we're not switching off. In fact, now is a really good time to be investing. Now is a really good time to be selling to other countries, because everyone has to do it through this medium. So if you're kind of thinking about entering other markets, then now could be a good time to trial some of those things, because everyone has to do it through Zoom, no matter where you are in the world. So, so yeah, I don't know if other people are kind of seeing that sort of thing though, with grants drying up.
Yeah, there's a different, depending on the business model. Up here in Brisbane and Queensland, we still have lots of profit grant. It's still happening, and they haven't stopped at all. So, like for my venture at Nature Freedom, we're still getting through this stuff. It really depends on what kind of grant you're looking at. Again, like what Peter said about this, it's about a funding stream or profit-based normal grant that based in the community. It could be depending on what kind of level that in the government. So yes, it's about try to be flexible with your model is changing, because who knows, it might change, but it's the right time to invest and be flexible with your business model so that you get an additional revenue. And another part of NGOs, the grant are still going on regular as well. If you're looking in these spaces as well, they never stop because it's already funded and it's continuous as well. So don't give up. It's still going. Everything is still not really actual business as usual, a different business as usual in our process now. Because I'm really glad we have NGOs in the first place. So otherwise, this would never happen. So we're just focusing on that new system. I mean, we work together and then keep looking at what Pete has recommended. Look at the social impact investment, link it up to these people in the community and the social enterprises that have a lot of game-changing tactics that will support you guys. So it's still a lot of to do. So this is my role tonight. It's about keeping a national group with everyone together because it's about building an ecosystem. Try to make sure each one of you, where you're coming from, and all the other 100,000 people in our network to be sure to be supported. So we can know what's available out there. And if we pick them with disability, what to start their business, we also can support them at the same time. So that's very important for next generation, but post-COVID new reality of the world. So it's so much opportunity. I can't list them all. It's really special for me. So thank you, Pete, for that tonight. It's really valuable. I know that not everyone who could able to make it to speaking. They just send it in the email and to go on Slack channel. We have the next one coming on the 23rd of September, which is the same time. I'd apologize for the date confusion because it was originally for tomorrow night, but it's tonight because they have a clash with the other event. I found out about 3 weeks ago. So the next session, September the 23rd, which is the actual Wednesday, will be focusing on NDAs. So I'm yet to have approval from the person who speaks for the guest speaker. But it would plan B, it would be still talking about the NDA support. We should have what the word say had been added to the support catalog the 3rd of July, that is self-employment stream support. It would be a conversation around this space for somebody like yourself, and I'm included myself. I'm doing this as well, begun on a plan. So it's all about the people in your network who on the NDIS plan consider self-employment support. It's nothing to do with employment, maintaining, assisting while on a job. It's about mentoring, the reasonable adjustment about, like what Pete's saying, example, what happened in doing the program. There will be a support person come along with you, that process. It's got to be a very interesting conversation. I really can't wait for September as well, because I can't wait for tonight as well. So I'm both for that. It's very exciting space to go through. So thank you everyone, and it's good to see lots of people here tonight. Hope you stay safe and keep warm in some part of the country. Thank you everyone. Have a good night.